Hello viewers and welcome to another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present the second week featured match of Sam Mann's Black Crusade, an online Conquest LCG competitive league. Today we see Parker Ince playing as the Swarmlord, with his choice of Synapse unit being the Stalking Lictor, and then to the north we have user Sage, better known as Scott Armstrong from the First Planet podcast. He's going to be playing as Ragnar Blackmane, so it's going to be Tyranids up against Space Marines. Both of our players are currently considering whether or not they want to keep their opening hand, as while they're in the process of doing so in assessing our opening layout of planets. Planet number 1 is going to be Planum, which allows you to move a non-warlord unit to the planet of your choice. Planet number 2 is going to be Taurus, something critically important to keep in mind considering we've got the Swarmlord here on the table. Planet number 3 is going to be Farron, which allows you to route a target non-warlord unit. Planet number 4 is going to be Barless, the random card discard planet, and planet number 5 is going to be Ossus 4, which allows you the opportunity to steal one resource. The Swarmlord happens to generate a 1/1 creature trait Termagant token at each adjacent planet whenever it happens to be commit to a planet. Therefore, that means that generally our Tyranid player's unit count is going to be very high indeed, and Taurus rewards its victor with the choice of either 3 cards or 3 resources should you win a battle at that planet and control fewer units than does your opponent. Our Tyranid player looks as though both of our players decided to keep their opening hands, ends up putting out a copy of Termagant Horde, one of my personal favorite army units, to planet number 2. 1 attack, 3 hit points, 1 command icon. As soon as a combat round occurs, you put 1 Termagant token into play at that planet, and considering we may see any number of different hive mind specialization units, that could be very powerful indeed. And speak of the devil, talk about unit count, we see the Spawn Termagant events played. That's going to be 2 cost, and it's going to be 1 Termagant token at each and every planet. So, looks as though Parker might be hitting that Termagant cap of 10 very quickly indeed, because as soon as the Swarmlord shows up at a planet, he's going to have a grand total of 7. As soon as a combat round occurs, if Ragnar, for instance, decides to show up at Taurus to try to trigger that battle ability, then that is going to be 8 Termagant tokens, which is just absolutely incredible. And something very important to keep in mind here in our Tyranid player's hand is this copy of the Burrowing Trigon. It's an elite unit. It's an incredible cost of 10, but it's a 7/7 with 3 command icons. You decrease that whopping cost of 10 by 1 for each and every Termagant token present at its planet. Some more Termagant synergy. We've got the 1 cost, 1 command icon Termagant Sentry. You could throw that at a planet. As soon as the token it is destroyed, it is readied. And also the Strangler Brood to boost the attack value of each and every Termagant token by 1. This is not one of my personal favorite units, but if you can use cards like Spore Burst to keep it alive, your Termagant tokens can nevertheless put in some considerable work for you. But on the Space Marine side of the table, we've got a copy of Blood Angels Veterans, currently positioned at planet number 2, 3/3 with a command icon for the cost of 3 whenever it's assigned damage. So long as it remains unexhausted, you decrease that amount of damage by 1, regardless of source. Planet number 3, here's a copy of Tallarn Raiders, 1 cost, 1 command, 2/2, provided that a warlord is present at that planet, but it's basically currently beating command over this no command icon Termagant token. Looks as though Parker has passed, but we've got a copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas at planet number 1 for the Space Marine, 2 cost, 1/3 with command area effect 1, and as well as a 10th Company Scout currently positioned at planet number 5. Definitely not something you see every day in a Space Marine faction deck, but if you run 3 copies of 10th Company Scout, your drop pod assaults are basically guaranteed that they're not going to whiff, even though we do happen to see cards like Tallarn Raiders in this deck. So, something critically important to keep in mind is that our Tyranid's choice of Synapse unit is going to be the Stalking Lictor. It's a 1/4 with 2 command icons. It could conveniently trump command at, say, Farron or Ossus 4, 4. It's not going to be able to trigger a battle ability, and wherever the Swarmlord shows up, you'll be generating Termagant tokens at each adjacent planet, but eliciting a battle at the Swarmlord's location. Looks like the Swarmlord is going to show up at planet number 5, so it's going to be able to trump that 10th Company Scout, and it'll steal a resource from our Space Marine, and it's going to be able to hopefully kill off the 10th Company Scout. Ragnar instead is going to be a little bit of a first planet bully here. He'll be able to win the first planet practically entirely uncontested, save for this one individual Termagant token, and that's going to provide him the opportunity, winning Planum, to relocate this Tactical Squad Cardenas or any unit to the planet of his choice. We might actually see him move Blood Angels veterans from planet number 2 to planet number 5 just to try to beat up the Swarmlord and prevent his opponent from winning that battle. But looks like Parker ended up coming across a grand total of 2 cards, 2 resources. Sage instead, my dear friend Scott, got just 1 card, 3 resources. For the Swarmlord, that's going to be the Leviathan Hive ship that he came across. That's going to be after a unit you control with a Hive Mind specialization and costs 3 or lower is destroyed, you exhaust that support, put that unit into play from your discard pile, albeit exhausted, at a planet. Note, Planum was captured. That's relocated the Tactical Squad Cardenas to planet number 2. Looks as though Scott's kind of just setting himself up favorably to kind of bully his way down the board. At present, he's just got 1 green and 1 blue icon, but if he wins at Taurus, if he's able to win at Barlas, then he'll be able to effectively win through green icons just by doing that. And if he can play a fast game, Ragnar definitely favors an aggressive playstyle, whereas the Swarmlord does much better during a longer control-oriented game. The more Termagant tokens you can generate thanks to that ability, the better, and Ragnar only gives you any benefit provided that he shows up at the same planet as the enemy Warlord. So let's see how things break down in regard to what Scott came across during the last round's command phase. He's got a glut of different Space Marine events here. That's a faction with just an incredible arsenal of combat tricks. Indomitable, for 1 resource, you basically negate an attack. Crushing Blow, you augment damage. Primal Howl, if Ragnar ends up being sent to the same planet as does the enemy Warlord, you're not just dealing damage, but you're also standing to draw additional cards, which for Ragnar is just absolutely fantastic. And considering that we're not playing against Captain Cato Sicarius here for our Tyranids, granted, specifically because the Swarmlord went after Ossus 4 here, I'll be very curious to see if he's not trying to starve his opponent in regard to resources. Looks like our Tyranid player came across another copy of the Strangler Brood, so each of these Termagant tokens currently sitting at planet number 1 are going to be attacking for an incredible 3. He's got a couple 2 shield value cards, so he'll be able to quite conveniently probably prevent his opponent from winning. At Taurus, the only problem is that Tactical Squad Cardenas is still definitely going to be a big threat at this planet, being able to kill off any number of Termagant tokens the instant that it's able to attack, although Spore Burst could interfere with that occurring. Crushing Blow can key off of Tactical Squad Cardenas' area effect values, so we'll have to see how things break down here. But our new planet number 5 is going to be Karnath, which allows the player that wins a battle at that planet to trigger the battle ability of any other planet in play. Scott ended up putting a copy of the +1 card bonus Void Pirate out to that planet, potentially reeling in 2 cards, 1 resource, unless our Tyranid does something about it, like sending the Stalking Lictor to that planet. And we've also got a copy of the Sanctioned Psyker, currently positioned at planet number 3, so definitely current planet number 1 is going to be very interesting this round in regard to just checking out what is going to happen. We've got an Honored Librarian being played by Scott, and that is going to be his very last deploy action. That's using up the last little remnant of his resources, but what planet exactly is Scott going to send that to? For our Tyranid player, I can't really envision that he'll use the Leviathan Hive Hive ship at this point. It's not generally the most oft-played Tyranid card in the world, but it could provide a pretty good opportunity to save these Strangler Brood units from being destroyed in returning them to play. For example, you could, have one of those units killed by, like, an Honored Librarian, which was sent to planet number 1, ultimately. That could take a swing, kill the Strangler Brood, then you could use the Leviathan Hive ship, return it exhausted to that planet, but it still confers its +1 attack value bonus to each and every Termagant token, so looks like Scott is currently in the process of deciding where exactly to send his Warlord. It's all going to come down to where exactly might the Stalking Lictor and the Swarmlord go. It's going to be suboptimal for the Swarmlord to show up at planet number 1 or planet number 5. Karnath would be a decent destination for the Stalking Lictor to show up. Looks like Ragnar is going to go planet number 2, and he manages to arrive at exactly where the Swarmlord was headed. So Swarmlord's going to create a token at each adjacent planet, and Ragnar is going to have the opportunity to either kill off the Termagant token present at planet number 2, or otherwise deal out 2 points of damage to the Swarmlord. And something which definitely does not work in the Swarmlord's favor is at planet number 2. Note, Ragnar's not only going to win command at that planet thanks to the additional 1 command icon thanks to these Tallarn Raiders here, but he's activating that Primal Howl, which he ended up hitting and drawing a Drop Pod Assault. So the resource bonus associated with Farron alone is going to be a sufficient number of resources to drop this Drop Pod Assault into play, and therefore things could be looking to go pretty bad for Parker, but he's definitely a seasoned and experienced Tyranid player. He's got a wealth of shield cards working in his favor, but let's see how exactly combat is going to end up breaking down here. Note, we've got a copy of the signature army unit Brood Warriors positioned at planet number 3. There are 3 Termagant tokens at that planet. Each of them is going to gain a command icon in addition to the 1 command icon of the Brood Warriors, so 4 definitely trumps 2. Parker's going to generate a grand total of 3 cards and 3 resources relative to Scott's 1 card and 3 resources. He's got a couple of copies of Promotion, not tremendously combat relevant, but it could provide pretty useful, say, during the following round, making sure that the Void Pirate can't be conveniently trumped by the Stalking Lictor here. But we're in the middle of combat. The initiative token is going to be in the possession of our Tyranid player. In regard to combat tricks, all that our Tyranid has at his disposal are 2 copies of Spore Burst. It's going to be pretty important that the Swarmlord try to successfully defend this planet, not only because our Space Marine already happens to possess 1 green strongpoint icon, but also because Taurus is potentially going to allow our Space Marine a fantastic opportunity to generate 3 additional cards for himself, or instead draw 3 resources. But we've got a Termagant token take a swing at Tactical Squad Cardenas, and that Indomitable means that it is not going to be destroyed. The Tac Squad threatens 1 point of damage to each and every unit at the planet. That area effect blast has gone out, and to the misfortune of our Tyranid player, we've got, 3 shield cards in his hand, but okay, so he discards a copy of Spawn Termagants to protect one of his Termagant tokens. He's also got 2 copies of Spore Burst. He doesn't have some more desirable, just 1 shield icon card. So let's see if he decides that Spore Burst is worth using just to preserve one of these Termagant tokens here. Note that our Space Marine player did not choose to use Crushing Blow to potentially kill off one of these copies of Strangler Brood, but both of these players are on Skype, and they may be in the process of deciding whether or not which of these units will or will not be used, will or will not be shielded from incoming damage. And there we go. That's going to be that copy of the Crushing Blow. That is going to be a Strangler Brood outright destroyed because of the area effect, and that's going to be one dead Termagant. And that is definitely what we call Value Squad, Cardenas, because it killed off that copy of Strangler Brood. It's gotten rid of a Termagant token, and it's gotten rid of a couple shield cards as well. So, once again, it's going to be up to our Tyranid player to take a swing. All of these 2 Termagant tokens are now attacking for 2, but provided that the Termagant horde itself survives until the end of this combat round, it's going to have another opportunity to generate an additional Termagant token. Interesting choice here. The Termagant token takes a swing of 2 at the Blood Angels Veterans, which is currently ready, so it's going to be able to shave off 1 point of damage. If Scott wants, he can use a shield card, and indeed he does, and that's going to be no points of damage dealt out to the Blood Angels Veterans. Now it'll be the Honored Librarian's opportunity to attack, or the Blood Angels Veterans, but I can only imagine that we're going to want to try to keep the BAVs unexhausted for as long as is possible. So the Honored Librarians take a swing at that Termagant horde, and all of a sudden, yep, that's going to be a dead Termagant horde, so things are starting to look pretty bad at this planet for our Tyranid player if they weren't already looking pretty grim. We've got another Termagant token take a swing, this time at the Tactical Squad Cardenas. It's going to be 2 points of damage. Scott, truly a man after mine own heart, I suppose, is going to go for not shielding until the absolute most necessary moment, so he doesn't bother to negate or deflect any of that incoming 2 points of damage. That's going to be a copy of the Blood Angels Veterans taking a swing, killing off that copy of the Strangler Brood. That is going to bring us to the end of a combat round. All of these units ready, and it's going to be up to our Tyranid player to decide first, does he want to retreat or not? Note, Parker has the initiative token. He could try to stay with maybe one of these units, just to potentially kill off the Tactical Squad Cardenas. It looks like he's opting to stay with both of his units, which seems as though that's a strange play in a sense. I'm not exactly sure what his rationale was for staying with both, unless he intends to shield against this Tactical Squad Cardenas area effect volley. Okay, and that looks like he just kind of accepts his fate there. He was unable to kill that Tactical Squad. Scott discarded that copy of Promotion, and then the Area Effect 2 Volley kills off both of those Termagant tokens, and let's do a real quick unit count. For our Tyranid, I do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in total for our Tyranid, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for our Space Marine. That's going to be 3 cards drawn for Scott, and now things are looking all the way bad for our Tyranid. At this point, all Scott needs to do is just bolster the bejesus out of Barlas, and then he's going to be able to basically trump our Tyranid. The Swarmlord uses his initial combat action to retreat. The Stalking Lictor is going to end up bouncing back to HQ, but Ragnar is going to have the opportunity to win a battle at Farron, and as if there were any other realistic option, the Brood Warriors are going to be routed thanks to Farron. Ragnar bounces back to his HQ, and now we've got this Brood Warrior that's kind of cramping where the Swarmlord is going to want to be sent. Ragnar could easily send himself to planet number 3. He's got that Tactical Squad Cardenas already set up to do some area effect damage. As an HQ phase has come and gone, both of our players have accumulated 4 resources. They've drawn 2 cards. We've got a new 5th planet, which is Yvarn. It's essentially irrelevant, as much as I feel bad about saying that, but Scott puts out a copy of the 2-command icon Sanctioned Psyker to that planet. He's going to be able to almost assuredly reel in 1 resource, unless for some inexplicable reason our Tyranid player decides to try to kind of trump his command at that planet, but that's going to be very difficult to do. Wherever the Swarmlord ends up going, Brood Warriors will go with him, and each and every Termagant token at that planet gains the benefit of 1 command icon, but unless the Swarmlord shows up at planet 2 or 3, that's not going to be any additional Termagant tokens whatsoever. I wouldn't be tremendously surprised to see the Swarmlord show up at planet number 1 to try to kill off that copy of Talon Raiders to prevent the Space Marine from using Farron's routing ability, and then that would put another Termagant token here at this planet. Note, all these Space Marine units would be showing up exhausted, presuming that Ragnar will show up at planet number 2, and therefore, just through the sheer weight of Termagant tokens, the Tyranid player might be able to deal out a considerable amount of damage to the Space Marines at that planet. Or something else we might see is we could see the Swarmlord essentially abandon planet number 1 and then just show up with as many units as is possible at planet number 2. But note, we've got 3 Termagant tokens present at that planet, and the Burrowing Trigon at present is only going to cost 7. So we could see that deployed to planet number 2. But on Scott's side of the table, we've now got a copy of Void Pirate positioned at planet number 4, Karnath. Scott's quickly running out of resources. He's only got 2 resources left, but it's enough for a drop pod assault. Presuming he picks up at least 1 resource somewhere, he'll be able to do an eager recruit. If he shows up at Barless, he'll be bringing a lot of units with him. That Burrowing Trigon is frightening, but it's by no means invincible, and if Scott comes across additional copies of Indomitable, that 7 could be over 9,000, and it still wouldn't be able to, chew through the bulwark here of that powerful Space Marine combat trick. But couple other interesting kind of uncommon inclusions in Parker's deck. We've got Parasitic Infection. You slap this on an enemy army unit, and once the combat phase begins, you generate a Termagant token for yourself. You deal the attached unit 1 point of damage. It costs just as much as does spawn Termagants, and there we go. It's going to cost him 7 resources, but there we see the Burrowing Trigon positioned at planet number 2. So that is a 3 command icon 7/7. That is one hell of a unit, and perhaps for this moment, Ragnar is hoping that he was instead Captain Cato Sicarius, or, with the Fury of Sicarius, to be able to handily destroy that 7/7 with but a single swing, because now, should Ragnar show up at planet number 2, he's going to be at risk of being bloodied by the Burrowing Trigon, so I wouldn't be tremendously surprised to see Ragnar instead show up at planet number 3 just to try to dodge the Burrowing Trigon and then try to just, pile as many units as is possible at that planet. Note, we've got a promotion on this Void Pirate to block off a command struggle snipe thanks to these Stalking Lictors, so I'll be very curious to see where the Swarmlord goes. We might see the Swarmlord go to planet number 1. We might see the Stalking Lictor go to planet number 3, if that's the case, just to block that Sanctioned Psyker. But I guess let's see where our players decide. Things are going nice and quickly, nice and smoothly, thanks to their being on Skype. Looks like the Swarmlord, unsurprisingly, is going to go to planet number 4, beat that promoted Void Pirate, and it looks like Ragnar's being a little bit ballsy, so good on you, Scott, for being a little bit of a risk taker. Ragnar shows up to stare down that 7/7. If he's able to come across, just enough to kill off this unit, if he can drop pod assault, eager recruit his way to killing it, if he can get if he can manage to come across a copy of Indomitable, which he did draw, then that could change things big time. So things are looking, they were looking pretty good for Parker, and now they are looking like they're about to approximate absolute dog shit. But let's see how things end up resolving. Both of our players have resolved all of their command struggles. Prince ended up accruing 1 card, 3 resources. Looks like he's got a copy of, I believe, the Virulent Spore Sacs, or what he came across. Note, planet number 1, the Tallarn Raiders are present at this planet, but they don't have any attack value because of just that Stalking Lictor being there at that planet. But we could see a Drop Pod Assault being dropped onto this planet, and that is going to change things dramatically. So will we see Drop Pod Assault? Will we see Eager Recruit? What are we going to see that could drive off this copy of Stalking Lictor? We see an Eager Recruit, so it looks like our player Scott here is trying to be sort of reserved, not wanting to use too many of his tricks until absolutely necessary. Eager Recruit takes a swing, but Spore Burst is going to end up negating that, and there we see that Drop Pod Assault. So it looks as though Scott, unfortunately for our Tyranid, is going to have a bit of an answer for anything, and as we're waiting for him to search the top 6 cards of his deck, another somewhat unconventional inclusion here in Parker's deck is going to be the Mycetic Spores. This seemed very appealing at first, but it seems kind of maligned by the Tyranid playing community. It's a support for 2. Combat action is you move a Hive Mind specialization to a unit to a planet with a Termagant token. So, wow, does that suck for Scott. Looks like Drop Pod Assault whiffed. And, whoa, if there were anything that could go wrong, that is looking like what it could take there. So if the Stalking Lictor is going to be able to kill off the opposition present at this planet, that could change everything. So if Farron ends up being won by our Tyranid, then therefore we could see the Honored Librarian routed, and we could still see things go just fine for our Space Marine. That's going to be that copy of Indomitable played right there, so it looks like Scott must not be too tremendously concerned about that Burrowing Trigon. And let's see it. That is going to be the Indomitable sparing the Eager Recruit. That Stalking Lictor has got 2 points of damage. The Eager Recruit takes a swing. The Stalking Lictor takes 1 point of damage thanks to the discard of a Parasitic Infection. And now I can only hope for Scott's sake that he was not being greedy in expending that Drop Pod Assault and the Eager Recruit and the Indomitable all in vain just to try to, well, I guess he didn't actually end up winning that planet. So Farron, congratulations to our Tyranid player for winning that planet. What is he going to get rid of? Is it going to be the Honored Librarian? I can only imagine, yep, that's what it's going to be. So goodbye, Honored Librarian. Now it's just Tactical Squad Cardenas, Ragnar, and the Blood Angels veterans. Things were looking very grim indeed for Parker, but now they're looking very good for Parker. Our Space Marine is all out of shields. He decides to retreat with Ragnar, and now our Tyranid player is going to be able to rid the board of anything and everything that our Space Marine player has left. Tactical Squad Cardenas is killed. The Burrowing Trigon's going to be able to take a swing, and that is going to be a dead Blood Angels veterans. These remaining Tyranid units are going to be able to take a swing, and it looks as though our players on Skype are just eliminating these units without the actual going through the motions of exhausting our Tyranid. So that Space Marine player is absolutely crushed. Now what our Tyranid has to do is just, oh my god, and Barlas's random card discard is going to be a copy of Honored Librarian. So Scott, I thought that you had this one in the bag, and what was I thinking, placing my faith in you, my dear sir, my good friend, and the Swarmlord, to add insult to injury, to grind that rock salt into the wound, takes a swing and kills off that Void Pirate, and I guess who was I to doubt Parker? What a spectacular showing. Oh man, if it wasn't already bad enough, Karnath is going to rob 1 resource away from Sage, from Scott. And would you look at the board state, how the tables have turned. Nothing but 2 Sanctioned Psychers for our Space Marine, an Honored Librarian, and a Talon Raiders that already has 1 point of damage. There are only 4 planets left. Prince only has 1 red material type icon, so he could win at planet number 4, but it's going to be up to Scott to try to block off his opponent from winning and just to try to overcome this economic onslaught. But you know, combat tricks are great. Eager Recruit, awesome card, but is it going to win you command? No, it's not. Blackmane Sentinel, 1 command icon card. 10th Company Scout, 1 command icon card. The Swarmlord does not have any damage whatsoever on it. Looks like Parker indicates that he forgot to trigger the Swarmlord last turn, so I'm not sure if we're actually going to see Termagant tokens generated now or not. in this highly competitive Black Crusade online Conquest LCG competitive league environment, I would be enough of an ass to disallow my opponent from triggering that reaction, but it's not looking as though Parker's attempting to do so. He's just kind of lamenting having spaced that with everything going on. And dear God, I still cannot get over how ridiculous this upset was. And that Planet 1 fight, oh, that was just crazy. But Parker puts into play Mycetic Spores. He's now going to be able to relocate his Hive Mind Specialization unit from planet number 1 to planet number wherever he'd like, provided that a Termagant token is present. Note that our Space Marine player has positioned his Blackmane Sentinel at planet number 3. Wherever Ragnar Blackmane shows up, it's going to be able to relocate itself to that planet. We've now got a copy of the 10th Company Scout at planet number 2, and now there's nothing more than 2 copies of Eager Recruit for our Space Marine player. Now it's going to be up to our Tyranid to try to just overcome the Space Marine. So check it out. We've got a copy of the 0-cost 1-command icon, 1 attack, 1 hit point Ripper Swarm positioned at planet number 4. That's going to be the perfect target for the Stalking Lictor to show up. 3 command icons is going to beat 2, and that's going to be 1 resource for our Tyranid, but also 1 resource deprived of our Space Marine. Looks like Sage, Scott has passed, but the actions keep coming for our Tyranid. We've got Virulent Spore Sacs positioned at planet number 2, which is yet another victory condition planet for our Space Marine. So, here's what Scott has to do. Scott has to try not to shit the bed by sending his forces to planet number 1 or planet number 2, and then he's going to have to be able to win at that planet. But what's going to make it incredibly difficult is this 7/7 at planet number 1, and then this Virulent Spore Sacs position at planet number 2. It's going to be able to deal out 1 point of damage to each and every unit that shows up. If that's the Talon Raiders, the Honored Librarian, and Ragnar, the Raiders could die, the 10th Company Scout could die, the other 3 units could take damage. Then the Volatile Pyrovore is going to be able to attack for 3. If it ends up being destroyed by an attack, it's going to be able to deal out 3 additional points of damage, and we have still another 2 shield value card here in hand for Parker. Both of our players have decided where exactly they want to send their warlords. The Swarmlord shows up at planet number 2 to try to kill off this copy of Ragnar's signature arm unit, but I can only imagine that the Blackmane Sentinel is going to relocate away from planet number 3 to planet number 2, although then it's going to get caught up in this Virulent Spore Sacs explosion, and things are actually looking a little bit grimmer than I may have expected them to for our Tyranid player, just because there's a whole hell of a lot of units kind of staring down Ragnar here, or rather Ragnar and a whole hell of a lot of units are staring down our Tyranid player, and even though Mycetic Spores is going to be able to readjust the location of a Hive Mind Specialization unit like this Brood Warriors at planet number 1, there's still a whole hell of a lot for our Tyranid player to overcome. So Scott only comes across 2 resources, no cards, but he's got 2 Eager Recruits in hand, and, maybe again I'm speaking too soon doubting Scott. Parker gets 3 cards, 2 resources, but they're not going to do him much good. He's got a couple Toxic Venom Thropes, which we're at the point of the game where they're not really too tremendously useful. He could have, used something like Dark Cunning much more, or Indescribable Horror probably would have been the absolute ideal, kind of a, the Tyranid version of an Archon's Terror, which could have removed this Honored Librarian or any other kind of problematic unit. Note that Blackmane Sentinel did move itself. Note, Barless is going to be won by our Tyranid. We've got a random card discard. It's, of course, going to be a copy of the Eager Recruit discarded from Scott's hand. Now we're going to see battle at planet number 2, and this is going to be a very interesting conflict. Ragnar has the initiative. Scott, like a little bit of a crybaby. Again, I'm only poking fun at him because he's a dear friend of mine. He calls out Parker from looking at his discard pile, but of course, that's clearly public information. You're abundantly welcome to do so. You probably just shouldn't reach across the table like a a bit of an ass to assess your opponent's discard pile. You should always ask for consent prior to investigating thy opposition's discard. But that Virulent Spore Sacs explodes. That's going to be 1 point of damage dealt out to each and every one of these units. Something critically important to keep in mind is that our Space Marine is currently unable to mitigate or deflect or otherwise circumvent any amount of incoming damage. So therefore, it's going to be very interesting seeing what these units do. The Volatile Pyrovore is going to be critically important because it can definitely deal out a tremendous amount of damage to the enemy units, and then whatever it is that ends up killing it, ideally something like an Honored Librarian, is going to take 3 points of damage, and because our Space Marine is out of shields, he's not going to be able to block off any of that damage. But the Blackmane Sentinel takes a swing. It's going to knock out a copy of a Termagant token. The Termagant Sentry itself is going to swing for 1. It kills off that Blackmane Sentinel, and if Ragnar, there we go, very wise man, Ragnar takes a swing at the Termagant Sentry, I wouldn't be tremendously surprised to see that shielded against. If Ragnar instead would have killed that ready copy of a Termagant token, then we would have just seen the Sentry ready thanks to its reaction there. But regardless, that Termagant token is going to take a swing at Ragnar Blackmane. That's going to be an additional point of damage dealt out to Ragnar. Now the Volatile Pyrovore is going to take a swing of 3. That's going to be 3 incredible whopping points of damage dealt out to Ragnar. And what are we going to see in regard to combat resolving? An Eager Recruit ends up being played to this planet. I can only imagine that the Eager Recruit is it going to take a swing at the Volatile Pyrovore? Yes, it is. It's potentially going to be setting it up for Ragnar to take a swing, and then Ragnar will be bloodied by that reaction, or we could have the Honored Librarian take a swing, deal that killing blow no matter what. Thanks to this, even this copy of Spore Burst wouldn't have been able to protect it. And I guess, things aren't done yet. Let's see how things unwind. There we go. I was about to talk about this thing. The Mycetic Spores now brings the Brood Warriors over to this planet, and that is going to be a bloodied Ragnar Blackmane. So I would say GG, but the game isn't done quite yet. So good on you, Parker, for playing an unconventional Swarmlord. Players aren't thinking he's too tremendously competitive. Maybe a big part of the reason is just a refusal of players to play unconventional picks like this support, so that definitely did a spectacular job there. Note, our Space Marine player is still going to have initiative, but he retreats with all of his units, and that is going to be incredible because Parker currently... Wow, so... It's totally going to be up to our Space Marine player. He is going to have to do everything he can to try to prevent our Tyranid player from winning the game. Note, Parker currently has a red, a green planet type icon. If he gets Ossus 4, that'll be another green icon. He can win through Yvarn, or if our Tyranid wins at Karnath and then Yvarn, it's looking like this is going to be a very long game indeed, but now Ragnar is bloodied. He's going to be showing up at whatever planet he sends himself to with all of these units exhausted, and now things are looking very difficult indeed for Ragnar Blackmane, even though there are already a bunch of Tyranid units positioned at all of these different planets. Thanks to this Mycetic Spore, we could potentially see wherever Ragnar sends himself, there could be at least one Tyranid sent to that planet to oppose him. At planet number 1, we've got a copy of the Virulent Spore Sacs now positioned. Thanks to Parker, we've seen an HQ phase come and go. Both of our players drew 2 cards. They accrued 4 resources. Looks like Parker, I'm sure he's very frustrated with what's in his hand right now, but it's each and every copy of the Toxic Venom Throw. And if there were anything, absolutely anything at all, that Ragnar would have wanted to try to win the game for him, it would have been 2 copies of Drop Pod Assault, or perhaps like an Honored Librarian and a Drop Pod Assault. So let's see if he can do it. This is one hell of a game. All that Ragnar potentially has to do to win this is show up at planet number 1 and manage to kill off all of the opposition there. Will the Swarmlord go to planet number 1, or will the Swarmlord would be a little bit risky and play probably like I foolishly would and put his units, send his Warlord further down the line just to make sure that you have units ready. I guess the most intelligent thing to do would be to keep blocking off Ragnar at any and every opportunity. Like, note, if Ragnar goes to planet number 2, the virulent spore sacks will blow up, potentially kill off the honored librarian, potentially kill the eager recruit. They'll damage Ragnar. They'll deal damage to this sanctioned psyker, but who cares about that 0-4 that's going to be showing up exhausted. We've now got a copy of Toxic Venom Thrope here at planet number 3. Looks like the Swarmlord decides to go to planet number 2. The Synapse unit goes to planet number 1. Ragnar is going to position himself at, I guess, the position of least resistance. That's going to be planet number 3. So this is very interesting indeed. Our Tyranid player is going to win a battle at planet number 1, presuming we don't see double drop pod assaults at that planet. He's going to win a battle at planet number 2. That could be a resource stolen, and then Karnath probably won't do anything. I guess our Tyranid could derive benefit from forcing both players to put a unit into play, but he's probably banking on the fact that, considering he's got no better than Toxic Venom Thropes, he doesn't have another Burrowing Trigon, his opponent would probably come out ahead as opposed to how he would do. So Scott only ends up accruing a grand total of 1 individual resource relative to Parker's 1 card and 3 resources, and this is a hell of a game. This is, I guess, why we call them featured matches, because we take 2 immensely talented, skillful players and we pit them against one another for your viewing enjoyment. It's a little bit like a Roman Colosseum, but then again, I guess if that were the case, we'd be wanting to see Captain Cato Sicarius, our, plumed headgear-wearing warlord, as opposed to our Space Wolf Ragnar. And I don't know if they necessarily had a large number of Tyranids in ancient Rome. But regardless, Ossus 4 is going to be captured by our Tyranid. That's going to put him at 2 green icons, 1 red icon, but he's still quite a ways away from victory. This is looking to be a long-ass game indeed. Just earlier today, actually, I was talking with Sam and a few others about what a ridiculous number of Planet 7 victory condition games we've seen in this league. Maybe it's just luck. Maybe it's in part due to how talented these players are that they're willing to play that incredibly long game that, while I was a much more fledgling player, I was so bound and determined to avoid at any and all opportunity. So Ragnar's got the initiative at planet number 2, and it looks as though Karnath is actually going to trigger Yvarn. So Parker moves a copy of Brood Warriors to his HQ, and I suppose Parker's rationale in doing this is either his opponent did not have any army unit whatsoever, or if his opponent did, perhaps he would instead just trigger that effect so that whatever his opponent would be putting into play would be arriving at a planet exhausted. And looks like we end up seeing a copy of Drop Pod Assault put into play at our final planet, and if there was anything that our Tyranid player would have wanted, it would have been a Tactical Squad Cardenas. I'm sorry, if there's anything our Space Marine player would have wanted, anything our Tyranid player would not have wanted, it would have been a Tactical Squad Cardenas. And it looks as though our Space Marine player is potentially going to be able to set himself up reasonably nicely to try to overcome this tremendous amount of Tyranid opposition. So let's hope for Parker's sake that he's going to be able to come across a copy of Indescribable Horror to remove this copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, because all those Termagant tokens are destroyed by the area effect. That copy of Ripper Swarm is going to be destroyed. Ragnar retreats as soon as he's able to do so, and that Toxic Venom Thrope isn't really able to do anything. It attacks ineffectually for 0, and well, actually, no, Ragnar does not retreat, looks like. And again, both of our players are on Skype, so they can kind of talk this out. They can do their takesy backsies much quicker than I can react to it or process what's going on without having the benefit of listening to them. Ragnar does not retreat. He instead disallows that copy of the Venom Thrope its opportunity to retreat. He manages to kill off this unit. We see another HQ phase come and go, and now it's all going to be up to Scott here. Granted, our Tyranid is going to be able to win. win at planet number 1, but that's going to be 1 red and 1 blue icon. That means our Tyranid player is not going to be able to win, and it's going to be up to our Tyranid to probably save as many units as is possible to put a mountain of different units out. At the final planet, we see the parasitic infection attached to that Honored Librarian. Very nice little play here. This is, again, as soon as the combat phase begins, you deal 1 point of damage to the attached unit, and you generate a Termagant token at that planet. It's going to be able to presumably kill off that Honored Librarian. Note, Scott only has 7 resources. Well, 7 resources is quite a lot, but he's only got 3 cards. He plays a copy of Blackmane Sentinel, and it's going to be up to our Tyranid to try to dig through his deck, just to try to deal out as much damage as possible, come across as many army units as he possibly can to try to counter these Space Marines. We do have a copy of Spore Burst, but note that that planet is not infested, and therefore he's not going to be able to retrieve a copy of Virulent Spore Sacs. But yet another unconventional unit, we've got a copy of the Biovore Spore Launcher at our current planet number 2. It's a 3/6 with a command icon, so it's definitely going to be absolutely fantastic in killing off all of these Space Marines. It alone could make a tremendous difference. And note, if the Swarmlord shows up at this planet, it's going to be the Tyranid player opportunity to attack first. The Swarmlord's going to be bringing a ton of units in tow. Mycetic Spores is going to be able to relocate one of these Hive Mind specialization units to that planet after the Tactical Squad Cardenas fires. If our Tyranid player isn't able to play Indescribable Horror, should he end up drawing one and having enough resources to actually play it, which it's not looking like he has enough resources now, but between Mycetic Spores, between this recently played Leviathan Hive ship, it's looking very likely that we could see a whole bunch of Termagant tokens use area effects, start threatening all of these Space Marine units en masse, and now it's going to be very tricky for Ragnar. Either Ragnar goes to planet number 1, he has to retreat immediately, otherwise he's killed by the Burrowing Trigon, or Ragnar goes to planet number 2, gains initiative for himself, but then if he doesn't retreat, he's going to have his Warlord take a considerable bit of damage. Note, Blackmane's Hunt is going to be a 1 shield value card, and our Space Marine player also happens to possess a Drop Pod Assault, but the Tactical Squad Cardenas isn't going to be able to overcome this Biovore Spore Launcher. The Termagant Horde is going to be able to generate Termagant tokens, and each and every Termagant token generated at this planet is going to be able to do Area Effect 1. So, looks like the Swarmlord actually is just deciding to show up at planet number 1. Very interesting effect here. Looks like that Biovore Spore Launcher is going to try to hang out by itself. It can deal a big amount of damage. So let's see if the Honored Librarian ends up being killed because of the parasitic infection. Parker, during the command phase, is going to end up getting 1 card, 1 resource. Scott instead gets 1 resource. He's got a Drop Pod Assault. Something critically important to keep in mind, our Tyranid player drew a copy of Clogged with Corpses, but that's not going to be tremendously useful. Blackmane's Hunt is going to be discarded as shields to spare the life of the Honored Librarian. Note, Ragnar has the initiative token at this planet, so we're going to be able to see the Tactical Squad Cardenas use its area effect ability first before the Tyranid player has the opportunity to attack, but our Tyranid is going to be able to at least preserve one of these Termagant tokens, and then they're going to be able to attack with area effect at least once, and threaten to kill off the Honored Librarian, threaten to just kill off the Eager Recruit, deal a whole bunch of damage, so it just seems absolutely ridiculous here. It looks as though Yvarn is going to be captured by our Tyranid player, but I don't think we actually saw Yvarn triggered. Definitely Parker's not going to be able to benefit much from doing that, so this is one hell of a game. We see a Termagant Horde generate a Termagant token. Note, Parasitic Infection generated a Termagant token. The Swarmlord generated a Termagant token. Tactical Squad Cardenas exhausts to do its area effect 1 volley. Spore Burst and Clogged with Corpses are discard to preserve the lives of 2 of these Termagant tokens. They've got area effect 1 thanks to that Biovore Spore Spore Launcher, and now let's see it. The Termagant token is going to be able to exhaust, and we can either see a Drop Pod Assault used, or we can see it discarded, and I guess we don't. That's going to be AE1, the Honored Librarian is dead. That's going to be 1 point of damage dealt out to each remaining unit at that planet. The Eager Recruit is going to be killed. There we see that Drop Pod Assault. I can't really think what exactly our Space Marine is going to try to put into play. By doing this now, he's potentially putting whatever he finds. Okay, it's a Veteran Brother Maxos. Definitely kind of a shitty draw at this point in the game. It's a 2/3 with 2 command icons, an entirely irrelevant ability when you've got 4 resources but no cards in hand, and this is going to be just yet another unit which could potentially stand to get hit by area effect thanks to our Termagant tokens here. So, Scott has no cards left in hand. Here's what sucks. Termagant is going to be able to use Area Effect 1, deal 1 point of damage to both of these useless Psychers. It'll deal a point of damage to Veteran Brother Maxos. It'll kill the Blackmane Sentinel. It'll deal a point of damage to the Tactical Squad Cardenas. Looks as though we see the Termagant Hive ship return a Termagant Horde to play. Just to verify, I'll say Termagant Horde isn't Hive Mind spec, ? So let me just see that. Because, yeah, the Leviathan Hive ship is only able to recur, yeah, I guess, okay. So perhaps I'm a little bit confused, but for some reason we saw a Termagant Horde interplay, and I guess a Brood Warriors ended up relocated to this planet, but the Brood Warriors would have been able to deal out a bunch of damage. The Biovore Spore Launcher would have been able to deal out a bunch of damage. The absolute best case scenario would have been Ragnar running away from this planet, him losing most of his standing forces, and then the following round, the Swarmlord would have shown up with this absolute mountain full of units. There was absolutely nothing that our Space Marine player could have done to withstand such an incredible just volume of Tyranids. And just as Scott calls out, that one battle where he used the Drop Pod Assault, the Eager Recruit, the whiffing Drop Pod Assault, and that Indomitable, all to end up losing the battle. That probably cost him the game, but an incredible match. Congratulations to Parker Ince for winning his Week 2 match in the Black Crusade League. Thank you so much for watching. Very well played by Scott Armstrong of the First Planet podcast, and this was one hell of a game. I hope you enjoyed this match half so much as I did. So if you're not already participating in the Black Crusade, I definitely encourage you to check out blackcrusadeleague.blogspot.com. I believe is the correct URL. Next season, we'll be looking for more entrants. Thus far in the league, I'm doing relatively well myself. Parker is doing absolutely spectacular. We've had a monumental number of upsets. Really, it's been a hell of a league so far. Some of the best players in the world, and considering that I'm in it, some of the worst players in the world as well. But very well played by both of our players. Thank you for watching this game. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Or if you are already subscribed, as ever, you're always encouraged to share this content, because the more players there are that see spectacular matches like this one, the more people may give Conquest a try, they may love the game, they might join our living card game community, and of course, the more players we are in number, the bigger message we send to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you'd ever like to contribute to the Hive Tyrant, if you'd ever feel so inclined to make a donation to my Patreon, I would be absolutely honored. So, once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.